All right, this is hands down the best jerky recipe you are going to try. And I'm super excited about doing this video because I need some more jerky. Every time I make this, it goes so fast. So I'm excited to be making a nice big batch, and I want to show you guys how to make some of the best jerky there is. Now when it comes to jerky, it's pretty simple. You get a nice lean piece of meat, something like a beef eye round, or I like to use a London broil sometimes. Cut it up nice and thin, marinate it with some delicious marinade, dehydrate it, then that's pretty much it. You have some delicious beef jerky that way. So how can this be the best way when jerky is such a simple recipe? Well, the thing is, I'm not going to be using beef for this recipe. So for this jerky, I'm going to be using this pork loin. That's right, we are making pork jerky, and that is why this is such a fantastic recipe. I don't know why I've never thought about this. I actually got this idea from a guy. I was working at his house, and he had a sweet setup in his garage for prepping meat. He had commercial everything pretty much. Commercial sausage maker, commercial vacuum sealer. He had stainless tables everywhere. It was air conditioned. He even had a walk-in fridge and freezer. I was pretty jealous of his setup, but he's the one who told me, why are you making jerky out of beef? Why not just make it out of pork? Pork is so much cheaper, and since you're marinating the meat so much, that's pretty much the flavor you get. And this guy had a piece of pork jerky that he made, and I tried it, and I could not tell the difference between the pork jerky and beef jerky. It tasted the same, both absolutely delicious, but the pork is so much better to do it with because the price is so much better. So I think I ended up paying about $15 for this whole pork loin, and it is 8.5 pounds. Whereas with an eye round, you're going to be spending a lot more money, and a London broil is also going to be a lot more money than one of these boneless pork loins. You can get these easily for $2 a pound, and on sale, they're probably down around 99 cents a pound. So you really can't beat that when making jerky. And obviously, I'm not going to make jerky out of this whole thing just because I don't have enough room in my dehydrator. So what's nice about this is you can cut off some nice delicious pork chops. You can cut off a little chunk or a pork loin roast, and then the rest of it you slice up for your beef jerky. So today we are doing pork jerky, so let's get right into it. All right, so you're going to need 2 knives for this. You're going to need a boning knife to trim this down. You're going to need a nice slicing knife to cut your pieces of jerky. Now we want to make the jerky with that nice center loin piece. If you've ever messed around with a pork loin, you know it's kind of got a piece that wraps around in that nice center section, which is very lean. So what I'm going to do is I want to make myself a nice roast here on the end, probably about that big. So we'll cut that down. You can see this has a nice fat cap on it. You see that nice lean meat. You can see this is all going to come off. So this as well, I'll probably turn into another roast, probably about right here. Right there, that darker colored meat. We're going to come in, we're going to trim that fat out. We're going to trim the fat off the top, and we just want a nice piece of lean pork. So these are my 2 roasts. All right, so let's get to trimming this. So like I said, we need to get this piece off here first. So just find that little seam. You can see the fat. And you don't really have to worry about doing a neat job. You can take a little bit of that inner loin meat off. It's not a big deal. Sometimes I also like to throw this in the freezer for a little bit, which this is semi-frozen kind of still. Just makes it a lot easier to trim. That looks pretty good like that. So we'll just come down and trim that off. Then usually I found that this piece is actually a lot bigger on some pork loins. This one's actually pretty small. But what you're gonna do is just save all these scraps. And this is perfect for sausage because it's deboned. Just throw it right in your grinder and you're ready to go. That's the other great thing about this jerky recipe is you're left with some awesome cuttings for making sausage if you do that sort of thing. So now that that's all off, we just got to go ahead and remove this fat cap. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can take some of the meat with the fat, not a big deal. Not the prettiest trim job. Like I said, you can see I'm not afraid to take some of that meat with the fat, because this is all going to my sausage pile, so I don't mind having a little extra meat in there. If you don't have anything to do with the spare meat, then I would say, yeah, try and keep as much meat as you can on the piece here. Then just try and rub out some of those hack marks I made. But that looks pretty good. That's a nice, clean, lean piece of pork loin right there. We're done with the boning knife. Now you're going to want to get yourself a nice slicing knife. This is a Henkel's knife. Henkel's makes fantastic knives, but these knives are super sharp, so this is going to be perfect for making nice slices. Now last time I went really thin with this, because that's usually what I like to do with beef jerky, but I think it was a little too thin. It almost turned into like jerky chips, where I want them to have a little more chew to them, so this time I'm going to try and go a little thicker. And again, it's a lot easier if it's frozen, semi-frozen, so something like that. That's probably a good thickness, maybe a 1/4 inch thick. You can go a little thicker too. Or if you like those beef jerky chips, go a little thinner. It's a very tedious part of this job. The important thing is whatever thickness you choose, just keep it the same throughout. Don't make a bunch thick and some thin, because they're going to cook at different times. You want them to cook evenly. You can see a nice sharp knife is super important for this. Alright, so I'm going to finish slicing this up, and then we will come back and make our marinade. Alright, now that we got the pork all sliced up, time to make this marinade, and it is super simple. We're starting off with pretty much a 50-50 mixture of soy sauce and Worcestershire sauce. Those are my two main ingredients for beef jerky marinade. And then you can kind of customize it from there. Put seasonings in there you like, add other things. You could always go in with a little liquid smoke, because I'm going to be doing this just in my dehydrator. I know some people make it on the pellet cookers. I've tried that once, I think I have a video on it, but the dehydrator is super easy and it makes fantastic beef jerky. Plus I usually let it cook overnight, so when I wake up in the morning the house just smells fantastic. We're going to get ourselves a good amount of this Worcestershire in there, and that's probably good for the amount of jerky we have. Now for this I'm going to add a little bit of honey. Just a touch of sweetness in there. I'm going to add some of my homemade barbecue rub. I don't want to add too much because this does have salt in it, but I do want some good flavor in there, so add some of that. Probably about a tablespoon. Then, since I'm a huge fan of black pepper, I'm going to put a good amount of black pepper in there. And I might even sprinkle some black pepper on before dehydrating as well. But that's it. Let's go ahead and mix this up. And that is that. So let's get our pork back. So I'm going to be vacuum sealing my pork. You could always just put this in a bowl, let it marinate. 24 hours is ideal. You can go longer. I wouldn't really suggest going shorter if you're doing the bowl method. The method I'm using, 12 hours will be plenty, and I will show you why. Let's get it all in there. Get this cutting board out of the way. There's all our pork in that bag. I'm just going to give this another quick mix. And we are going to dump it right in. Oh, of course I make a mess. I can never do anything without making a mess. Don't worry, I'm going to cut this out. You won't even know. Alright, so pour all that marinade right in there. Make sure your bag doesn't fall over. I like to just give this a little bit of a mix around. After I vacuum seal it, I can mix it up as well. So that should be good right there. Now, the reason I'm able to put this in a vacuum bag is because I have a vacuum chamber sealer over here. This is a WEVAC vacuum chamber sealer. This thing is phenomenal. If you vacuum seal a lot of food, I highly suggest looking into one of these. I'll leave a link down below to this one. Not sure the price. I think it's might be around $300-400. Not positive on that, but it's great because it's so much better than a normal vacuum sealer. I've had so many different vacuum sealers. This is just a game changer because you can vacuum seal liquid without any issues at all. I know when you have a normal, even when you're vacuum sealing meat with a normal vacuum sealer, sometimes that liquid gets sucked into your vacuum sealer, goes in the sealing area, then it won't seal. You don't have that issue with this because it's a vacuum chamber sealer. Chamber vacuum sealer, I don't know which way it goes, but. So I'm gonna throw this in there, get this sealed up. And look at that. Perfectly sealed with all that liquid in there. I'd like to see you do that with a normal vacuum sealer. That's why I absolutely love this thing. But now I kind of want to just see if I can spread these out so it gets in between all these different pieces of pork here. And that is a thing of beauty right there. That's why I highly suggest those WEVAC vacuum sealers. Now another awesome feature on the WEVAC that I'm going to be using for this jerky is a marinade function on there. And that's why I said I can get away with 12 hours, probably even less because of this function. So what it does is you get your bag vacuum sealed like this. Then you put it in there, set the marinade function. And what it does is it pulls the vacuum like it was going to seal. So this bag will inflate because that's going to be in a vacuum inside that chamber. All the liquid and meat in here is going to expand because it's no longer under pressure since it's in a vacuum. It's going to open up all the pores on these pieces of meat. It's going to allow that marinade to penetrate this meat a lot quicker than it would if it was just sitting in this marinade in the fridge. So you can set timers for how long you want to marinate. You can do 6, 12, 20 minutes. Not sure how high it goes, but I usually do around 6 minutes like that, then just do a normal marinade, and that's plenty of time. Works fantastic with pork because pork is not as tough as beef, so it really opens up those pores and lets this marinade get in there and really cuts down on your marinade time. But I have done this with steak. It is just a great feature on this machine. So I'm going to go ahead, throw this in there, do the marinade for 6 minutes, then it's going to go in my fridge for another 12 hours or so. Then I will see you back out here. We're going to throw it in the dehydrator and start getting it dehydrated. So I actually let this go for 24 hours. Now I said you'd be fine with 12, which you would be because I did that fast marinade on my vacuum sealer. This really does a great job of marinating meat fast when you need it done quick. So again, I highly suggest the WEVAC vacuum sealer. It's a decent price and a good vacuum sealer. It's all done, so let's get to the next step, which is very tedious. Here I have a tray lined with a couple sheets of paper towels. We're gonna lay down as much meat as we can, put some more paper towels on top, and dry this meat because it needs to be super dry before we put it into our dehydrator, which is gonna help dehydrate it. So let's get to it. All right, so I just cut the corner of the bag, drained out all the marinade I could, and that's just gonna make it a little easier because if you're pulling out pieces from wet marinade, it's going to be even wetter. So let's go ahead and just lay these down. And with the amount of pork I have here, I'm probably going to have to do a few batches. So I'm going to lay these down. I'll cut ahead to when it is full. All right, so we got a full tray here, ready to go. So just take our 2 sheets of towels, give it a press, and that is pretty much it. If you see any wet ones, you can go ahead and just give them an extra tap. We're just trying to get some excess moisture off the top of these. So now that we got that, we're going to need our food dehydrator. This is a Nesco Professional Food and Jerky Dehydrator. I've had this thing for a long time and it works great. So it's got sections of trays here. You can see each one comes off, so I like to take this top off, pull these off, then I will just get my glove. Now we'll take these pieces of pork, Just lay them in here. You don't want them too close together, but you can get them pretty close. I just leave a little bit of a gap because they do shrink, and you're gonna wanna try and pack in as much as you can here. And it's kind of like a puzzle. Just gonna have to move them around. Try and fit one in, find the small one, and there we go. I'll show you this tray I got. So you can see how there's a little bit of gaps between them, but you can get them pretty close because, like I said, once it starts dehydrating, they shrink up. So you'll have plenty of space once they start shrinking a little bit. So I'm just gonna dry these, fill this up, and then I will cut to when I'm all done and this is filled. All right, so we are all filled up here. I got 4 total trays, and it was a perfect amount for 4 trays. I think I actually have 2 more trays for this if I needed more, but this amount was perfect for 4 layers of jerky. So this is ready to dehydrate. So for this, all we got to do is put the top on, plug it in, and there's a little dial here for different temperatures, and then it kind of tells you here what kind of temperature you want for, say you're doing fruits and vegetables, 135, nuts and seeds, 105, herbs, 95. Meats and jerky, they have 160 degrees. So if you're not using one of these, if you're using something else to dehydrate, you're looking for 160 degrees. You just want to get even temperature, and you need good airflow. So there's a little fan in here with a heater, and it just blows hot air through this thing at 160 degrees. Now time-wise, this is probably going to take 10 hours or so, maybe 12. I usually set this up overnight, let it go, wake up in the morning, so it'll probably be 8 or 10 hours later when I check it, and I'll see how it's going. If they're done, I pull them off, and if they're not, I let it keep going. So before I hook this up, I want to just tell you a few things, little in case you're looking for different recipes. Now, at this point, if you wanted to add some extra seasoning, say you wanted to add crushed red pepper, some cracked black pepper, now's the time to do it. Just add that on top before you start the dehydrator, and you'll have a nice extra seasoning layer on there. Also, if you're looking to get a whiskey infused jerky, I got this idea from the same guy who told me about doing pork jerky. Instead of adding the whiskey into your marinade, which is an option, but you'll lose a lot of that whiskey flavor during the dehydration process and the marinating process. So what he suggested is a great idea. As soon as they're done, all these pieces are going to be nice and hot. Not hot, but 160 degrees. At that point, as soon as they're done, pull them off. Have yourself a little whiskey in a spritz bottle and just give them a nice spritz when they're hot. So it'll evaporate that alcohol off the top from that heat, and you're going to get a nice little whiskey flavor to your jerky. So if you're looking for a whiskey jerky, highly suggest doing that. I haven't tried that yet, but I've been wanting to, and I'm not going to do it with this. I will be trying that. If you do try that method out, leave a comment down below. Let me know how it turned out. But I'm going to get this plugged in, let it go overnight, and then I will see you in the morning, and we'll check out how this pork jerky came out. All right, the pork jerky's done. I let it go for 10 hours on that dehydrator at 160 degrees and checked it, and it was completely finished. This stuff came out fantastic. It smells great. Now, I know there was no smoking involved with this, but if you want some smoke flavor, like I said, you can add the liquid smoke. I do have a beef jerky recipe where I smoke it, then dehydrate it. I didn't notice too much of a smoky flavor, so I don't really do that much anymore. I just do this when I'm making jerky because it is so easy, so delicious, and now that I know I can do it with pork loin, it's a game changer because it saves me so much money. And if you looked at this, you would have no idea that this is pork. It looks just like beef jerky, and it tastes just like beef jerky. Because when you make beef jerky, it's all about that marinade. It imparts a ton of flavor on the beef, and since it is dehydrated, you don't get too much beefy flavor because you've taken all those juices out of there. You basically just get the marinade flavor. But let's go ahead and check this out. See, that's nice beef jerky right there. Not pork jerky. And the thing about pork too is it doesn't have those strands that you get with the beef jerky, which can make it kind of chewy. But let's go ahead and give this a try. So So it's got that traditional chew of a beef jerky. It's not softer than beef jerky or anything. The only difference is it doesn't have those strands, so it can be a little easier to chew sometimes, but obviously with jerky, you know it's going to be chewy. But that marinade is absolutely delicious. And if you can see here, these little specks of the seasoning, that adds great flavor. And like I was saying, you can sprinkle on some black pepper before you dehydrate it. I didn't really need to do that because I added the seasoning into the marinade, and a lot of it got stuck to the meat, which was nice. But if you like making beef jerky, give the pork loin a try because you're going to save a ton of money. And I'm telling you, it tastes just the same. It's even a little more pleasant because, like I was saying, it doesn't have those strands sometimes you get in beef. And I-round doesn't really have it that much, but with the London broil, it's really got the grains in there that'll make it stringy, and if you don't cut it in the right direction either when you trim it. This stuff is absolutely fantastic, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like. I'm going to leave a link to everything I like to use in my videos in the description below if you want to check that out, see what I like to use. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe right over here, and I'll leave my barbecue seasoning video over here along with the other jerky video where I do a smoke and dehydrate to see if you want to do that, and that's traditional beef jerky made with beef. But I'm telling you, once you try pork, you're not going to want to go back to beef jerky because this stuff is so good. But most importantly, and I know this isn't smoked, get out there and smoke something good.